Good evening, everyone. I'm Crystal Lundy, the Executive Director at the Meadville Chamber, and I'm very proud to be in this room with so many businesswomen. Give yourselves a round of applause. I have a few thank yous to do and a few introductions, and then I am beyond excited to introduce our speaker here momentarily. But big round of applause for these people. Please wait till I announce them all. Our platinum sponsors for this evening's event are Bayshore Homes, Griner Extrusion, TL Robertson Insurance. Big thank you so much. Our premier sponsors are Allegheny College and Penelec. Our inspiration sponsors are Accutech Precision Aerospace, Channellock, First National Bank, Marquette Savings Bank, Northwest Bank, and our spirit sponsors are Armstrong. Thank you for recording, Kevin. And Chateau Christine, Glenn Peterson Floors and Furniture, Meaden and Moore, Northwestern REC, Pipeline Systems, and Spectrum Reach. Thank you so much to these companies for sponsoring this event. At this time, if all of the people that are in the Business Women's Roundtable group that we hold monthly that help plan this event, please stand. Thank you to these women for planning this event. If you are part of that Business Women's Roundtable group, and a huge round of applause for the Chamber staff. I have an incredible team of people, and I even brought back my work son, Corey Young, who's here for one night. So thrilled to have him back with us for one night for the event, but a big round of applause to Karen Stout, our communications coordinator, Emily J. Jacks, the executive assistant, and Eileen Mullen with the Chamber Foundation. I'm very thrilled that I have some very dear girlfriends, some of whom I've had since kindergarten and are here. And I'm very glad to have some of my family here. My sister and my niece are here, and I'm very thrilled about that, besides having some of my very best girlfriends and business colleagues here. So thank you so much for being here. In May, two of my dearest girlfriends, Sheila Wood and Micah Hoffman, we went to Pittsburgh for a birthday celebration, and we're wondering what to do in Pittsburgh. And Micah was reading a magazine of her father's, of the alumni magazine of William and Mary the previous weekend, and said, I know that Kiya Tomlin has a store not far from here, and they make their clothing right in the store, and it's in Pittsburgh, and we were very close, so we Googled to see how far it was, 20 minutes away. So we went to the store and were blown away. Amazing. We met Brittany, who's here today, and we were there for like 2 hours, because of course we like to shop. If you know me, you know that. And the clothing line was fantastic. There were girls in the back sewing right there at the workplace. We asked about different things that they did and different things that Kiya does in her community, and learned many ways that she gives back to her community. And of course, my light bulb goes off because I'm a businesswoman. And I love what I do, and I love businesswomen, and I surround myself with great businesswomen. And we plan this event every year, and I instantly thought she would be a dynamic speaker for our Women in Business Expo. So of course I always have business cards on me. And I gave one to Brittany and asked if Kiya might be interested in speaking at our Women in Business Expo, and told her all about it. And she said she'd gladly talk to her about it and thought that she would. Lo and behold, the next week I heard back from her, and she said she'd be honored to be here for us. So that day with two of my besties turned out to be a great day for all of us right here. So I'm very thrilled, as you can see, and very honored to introduce Kiya, and we're glad to have you here. But first of all, many of us in this room can relate to a few of these things that I want to say now. A daughter, a sister, an athlete, or many years ago when we were athletes, a student, a wife, a mother, a seamstress, a designer, and an entrepreneur. All of these things describe Kiya. She's all of these and more. She helps women all over the country feel good about wearing comfortable, versatile, and stylish clothing. I'm of course wearing 2 of her pieces and I love them and I feel like I'm in a sweatsuit. She firmly believes in giving back to her community in many ways, and we're going to hear about that. Ladies, please give a warm Meadville welcome to Kiya Tomlin.
Thank you, Krista. That was quite a welcome. I thought she was talking about, I've met so many people here earlier, and as she's like naming all these things, I'm like, oh, she's talking about everybody. And then I was like, oh wait, that's me. But it's been great to have the time in advance to get to meet everyone and talk a little in depth. Makes me a little bit less nervous. But thank you for inviting me to speak, and thank you all for the very warm welcome. I've never been to Meadville before, but I have heard a lot about it. A dear friend of ours, Randy Feetner, is from here. And I've been hearing about Meadville since about 1997, I think is when we met. And I know that also Miss Linda, his mother, still lives in Meadville. And after 20-some years, I still don't know Miss Linda's last name. But I do know Miss Linda very well, and I know she's out of town, so she's going to miss it. What's her last name? Lloyd? Oh, okay. Okay, I'm not the only one. Okay, good. And I also have heard that Sharon Stone is from here, from Randy. So thank you for asking me to speak today. Usually when I speak, I talk about clothing, usually about, what clothing says about you, which is essentially like what not to wear to work kind of talk. I used to get asked to speak to it a lot for high schools. But I didn't want to talk about that today. I kind of wanted to, talk about something more personal, more authentic. So I was a little nervous, so I decided to hire a speechwriter to do that. And yeah, it didn't work. It failed. So I don't know if it went on the mailer, but I guess a few weeks ago, Krista had asked me the topic I was going to speak on, and I didn't know because I wasn't writing the speech. So I reached out to the speechwriter, and he said, "Oh, how about paying the price? What are you willing to sacrifice?" And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, that sounds great." But it great title, but the content kind of didn't come together. It was very dry and impersonal, and I guess that's what happens when you ask someone else to write the speech for you. But that experience it actually gave me the confidence to acknowledge that on my own, I think I do have something to say, that I have a story to tell. So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about myself. I'm a type A personality. I'm a perfectionist, and I hate to fail. But who doesn't, right? So I'm going to start by several years ago. See if I can coordinate. There we go. Several years ago, I started a book club with a group of friends. And one of the first books we read was The Invisible Bridge by Julie Oranger. Has anybody read that? No, it's a beautiful book. It's a beautiful book, beautifully written, and it's about 2 Jewish brothers in 1930s Hungary, before the start of World War II and before the Holocaust. And in this one scene early in the book, the main character, Andres, is leaving Hungary to move to Paris, where he's going to study architecture. And his older brother, Tibor, in a few months, he's going to move to Italy to study medicine. And so they're at this cafe, kind of saying their final goodbyes before Andres leaves. And Andres asks his brother, he says, "And what if I fail?" And his brother says, "Then you'll have a story to tell." And just that, "then you'll have a story to tell," that really resonated with me, because it at that moment gave me the freedom to kind of release that perfectionist in me and that fear of failure. And it gave me the courage and the permission to really try and do what it was I wanted to do. So the struggle all began when once I was old enough for people to ask, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And is there a wrong answer to that? I wanted to be a doctor, a surgeon actually. It sounded like a noble profession, and I like to cut. So I went to college to be a doctor. It never occurred to me to be a fashion designer. But somewhere between graduating from William & Mary with honors in pre-med and applying to med school, I realized that I didn't want to be a doctor. I liked medicine. I liked to make people feel good. And I liked that people were impressed by the answer. Oh, I'll answer that. No? All right. But I had just spent 4 years preparing to go to med school, and I didn't know what I wanted to be, but I knew it wasn't that I wanted to be a doctor. And that was kind of my first fail. Around that same time that I was questioning what I wanted to be when I grow up, I took a trip to visit a friend. And we spent the evening sitting around our kitchen table with our parents and just talking about good old times and, where we were in our lives now and what were our plans for the future. And I let them know that I was uncertain with, my path in medicine. And her mom had an amazing piece of advice. She just simply looked at me and she said, well, find what you love to do and figure out a way to make money doing it. So looking back, designing clothes was a hobby I've loved all my life. As young as 4, I was 4 in this picture, I would make dresses using Xerox paper. My mother was a college professor, and I would often have to go sit in her office or the back of her classroom while she worked, and this is how I would occupy myself. So I would use, Xerox paper, scissors, staples. I would also steal my older brother's wooden building blocks and turn them into wedge high heels by taking the cardboard off the back of my mother's notepads. I'd trace my foot and then we'd staple it onto the wedge, and then I'd take paper towels and roll them up and create the straps. And I seriously would try to sneak out of the house wearing those with shoes. By 8, I was pouring through my aunt's fashion magazines. She was the only person interested in fashion in my entire family, and she used to basically collect Vogue magazines, like back in the day when they were this thick and they had the perfume samples and the lipstick samples in them. And I'd go to her house on Saturdays, and her coffee table would be piled high with them because she never threw them out. And so I would pour over those and also watch, she had the big floor model TV, and would watch fashion TV that would be on Saturday mornings. By 10, I wanted to wear all the fashionable styles that all the, the older the teens were wearing, but I was really, really short, as you can probably see. I was probably about the size of a 6-year-old at 10, and back then they didn't have all the cool clothing stores that they have now. It was kind of Sears, and they only had the little dresses. They didn't have all the cool stuff. So I asked Santa for a sewing machine. Now, nobody in my family knew how to sew. But my mom had taken home ec in 8th grade. So on Christmas Day, she dusted off her 8th grade sewing skills, and together we learned how to operate the sewing machine. My first project was a stuffed mallard duck, the kind that comes already printed onto the cotton, and the little cut dotted lines that you cut around. And I sewed that little 3-piece duck together and stuffed it. And next I said, I want to make a jumpsuit, and it's going to have an elastic waist and tapered legs. And my mom was like, so very quickly I taught myself how to continue sewing, how to read patterns, how to then patchwork the patterns I would buy from the store together to create designs I had in my head. So if I wanted sleeves that looked like this, a neckline that looked like that, a torso that looked like that, I would buy 6 different patterns, cut them apart, and do a patchwork Frankenstein to try to get to the design that I had in my head. While I was in high school, even though I worked 3 jobs and I was a competitive gymnast, I always found time to design and sew. I would make stuff for friends and family, and my specialty was prom dresses. I didn't say they were tasteful, but this was late 80s, early 90s, so it was a little leeway there. While I was in college, I would design clothes for my roommate, the girls on my gymnastics team, for the sorority girls that needed the white dresses for initiation, as well as the costumes that they needed to do the step shows. I even made all of my bridesmaids dresses during it was during my final exams my senior year. So armed with the rediscovery of what I love to do, I set off to figure out, all right, how to make money doing it. There was definitely a learning curve to making money, especially since I'd spent the last 4 years studying pre-med. I didn't know the basics of running a business, like something as simple as budgeting. At that point, my concept of budgeting consisted of don't spend anything. Mike and I got married right after college, and no jobs, no money. He was in graduate school, and I was studying to take my MCATs, because I was still going to med school. We lived off of the $700 a semester stipend that he got, so that equates to about $116 a month. And my roughly $500 a month that I got from my part-time job coaching gymnastics. And thank God that he could eat with the football team, and I'm a little person and don't require a lot of food. We're also thankful for Collect Calling and for the bootleg video store down the street, where we could rent our videos for $1, or 2 videos for $1, and we would go and select our movies. We based it off of which movies were 2 tapes long, because then we could really maximize our $1 there. But along with no phone service, we had no cable TV. We could get PBS if we positioned the rabbit ears just right. But aside from rent, we had no bills. So our budgeting strategy consisted of make sure the bank account does not drop below $500. And that was really just in case there was an emergency, like a flat tire, or I don't know what else we could get done with $500 in terms of emergency. But that was all I knew about budgeting. Don't let the checking account drop. So the first step on my new path was to enroll in business classes. So not long after, we moved to Cincinnati, and I was able to enroll in their College of Design, Art, and Architectural Planning, and actually study fashion design formally. And after just 2 years of learning the basics, I decided to jump in with both feet and started a business designing custom wedding gowns. I don't have a picture of any of my brides. but I love designing wedding gowns. I love the expensive fabric. I love the ornate detail. I love the fittings at every stage of the process. And I love making the brides happy. It was like the pinnacle of design. I mean, wedding gowns, of course, are probably the hardest thing to make. But I just thought that if you could design a wedding gown, then you were on top of the world. And I had wonderful clients. They were relaxed and easy to work with, and pleased at every stage of the process of watching their wedding gown dream come to life. So yeah, I had wonderful clients until I didn't. I had a bridezilla, and she lived out of town. She would come in for her fittings, and she would love the dress, and she'd take lots of pictures and be very excited, and then she'd go home. And 2 weeks later, she'd call me and say, I don't like this. I need to change this. I don't like this. I need to change this. And which I did, of course. And this was every fitting. We probably had about 6 fittings. Every fitting, this is what happened. And then after I sent her the dress, and then she had her wedding, but I didn't hear anything about it. And I waited, and finally I reached out and wanted to know, like, how'd the wedding go? How'd the dress work out? And she said it was horrible. It was horrible. It didn't fit. It ruined her whole wedding day. And I was devastated, because I just wanted to make brides happy. And that was my whole goal. And I failed. So I refunded her the money and licked my wounds. And a few months later, I ran into the person that actually had referred her to me. And, I mentioned, about the dress. And she's like, what are you talking about? And she showed me a picture of the dress, and it was perfect. The only thing wrong was she had like a few little wrinkles from sitting in the limo. So anyway, but it was okay. Aside from the wrinkle, I just no longer wanted to design custom wedding gowns anymore, and not even mother of the bride, because they're just as bad. So we moved to Pittsburgh, and I set up my design studio in the attic. And my custom non-bridalwear home business was doing well and gave me the flexibility to multitask my home responsibilities. I could work, I'd take breaks to cook dinner, I'd do a load of laundry, I'd raise my 3 kids. I had a handle on it. I was looking forward to picking up speed and making this business go. That is until a pale pink evening gown and a toddler met with SpaghettiOs. I was panicked, but fortunately it was in a good place, so I could kind of sponge it out to fade and then put some lace over it, and it all worked out. But I think that sign, that was a sign I needed to move and kind of separate my home from my workspace. So I moved to the garage. So it wasn't ideal, but it did get me away from the housework and the kids. And I had more space, and I was able to set up like an enormous cutting table. And anybody in here, like if you sew, you know like what a luxury a big cutting table is, because you can put the fabric on top of it. You don't have to roll it out on the floor and then bruise your knees up crawling around on it trying to cut things out. So I had a handle on it. Everything was picking up. It was looking good. Here's a few custom gowns, some custom work. So yeah, everything was going good, and then the garage flooded with sewage. So apparently there was this, I live in a very old house in an old neighborhood, and apparently we're right on, if anyone's familiar with Pittsburgh, Chatham College, that's our backyard, so we're right on Chatham, basically on Chatham's campus. And apparently there was a very old, like 100-year-old sewage line that no one knew about and was not on record. And it broke and flooded a few houses on the down end of the line, which we were one of. But fortunately, it didn't get into our house. It was just our detached garage. So, but it like ruined everything. I lost everything, my computerized embroidery machine, my library of textbooks, my cutting table. So I was very frustrated. The garage was a mess, and there wasn't anything I could salvage. Even if the sewage water hadn't touched it, the sewage air had. So I had nothing. The kids were all in school. So there was no urgent need to be home all day. So I cut my losses, and I leased a space in a developing neighborhood of Pittsburgh, where in East Liberty, if anybody's familiar with East Liberty. If you're familiar with East Liberty now, this was not quite the East Liberty then. It's getting pretty nice now. But this is, it's a separate place where I could go and do my work and meet with clients away from all the home distractions. So it was really good to be out of the house. I could focus. I wasn't interrupted by laundry or cleaning the kitchen, and I worked by appointment only, so I still had the luxury of dressing for comfort, even when I didn't have any appointments lined up. So it was like a day like that when I got a call from my husband that he needed to work late, but he had an event that he was supposed to attend. So he called and asked me if I could fill in for him. So this is not really unusual. I do that for him all the time. But ran the kids, cooked the dinner, did all that, jumped in the car, got to the event. I'm spilling out of the car as I'm putting my shoes on while the valet is there, and the valet kind of helps me out of the car with my shoes, my heels in my hand, and he looks in my car and he's like, "You got a lot of shit in your car, lady." So very embarrassing, because it wasn't, he knew who I was. He was like, "Mrs. Tomlin, you have a lot of shit in your car." So at that moment, I knew that I needed to do something. And I did. I literally had my entire closet in the car, because that's how I lived. I was always going from place to place, trying to keep up with my life. So that day was when I decided that I need a uniform. Something was going to change. I needed it to be comfortable enough to move around in, professional enough to work in, versatile enough to live in, and easy enough to care for. Something that would allow me to make one less decision in the morning. And I was thinking, like, all the great minds have like a uniform. Like Mark Zuckerberg has his gray hoodie, and Karl Lagerfeld had his blazer, and Vera Wang has a white crisp shirt and black leggings. My husband wears the same damn black shirt and sweatpants every single day. Did I lose my? I think I lost. Did I lose the microphone? Ooh, hello. Did I do something? Well, I'll just keep going on. But yes, my husband wears the same thing every day. He comes home. This is like a little bit of an aside. But when we first got married, and we had been married for maybe 2 weeks, and I was still into the whole newlywed thing, and I was going to do there's only two of us, so I was going to do laundry for the first time. And I went to do laundry, and there were only my clothes in the hamper. And I was like, what? And there weren't even towels, it was just my towels. There weren't even his towels. And so I'm going, where are his clothes? Where are his clothes? And so I didn't say anything. I didn't ask or anything. I was still like nervous newlywed. And so I just was like, I'm just gonna like wait and see.
Sneak it here, sorry.
Uh-huh. And so I waited and I watched for like another week and a half. And finally, and I still no dirty clothes. And I finally, I was getting kind of grossed out because I was like, I don't know what he's doing. Is he turning his underwear inside out? Like, I was like, what did I marry? I don't know. And so I finally asked him, and he was like, oh my God, you're so stupid. Like since he was working all day with the football team, and all the college kids just throw their stuff in like the industrial washing machines. That's what he does. So his clothes were getting washed at work, and I didn't realize that. But because he would work all day, he'd come home at midnight, 1 o'clock, because that's how they do the graduate assistants. He'd come right to bed, take his clothes off on the side of the bed, get in the bed. Next morning at like 4 or 5 in the morning, he'd get back up, put his feet like right exactly back in them, and just put them back on and go to work. And it was the same outfit coming and going. So I was relieved to know that because I was about to run. Anyway, so as I was saying, a uniform that I didn't have to think about and could just put on every day and always look appropriate. So my uniform was the idea. Came in the form of a machine washable fitted sweatshirt dress with pockets. And I wore it everywhere. I wore it to work, ball games, running errands, cocktails, literally everywhere. Enough people stopped me and would ask me where I got my dress. And so I kind of started thinking like, this is not a bad idea, not a bad idea. So, since custom design is like a really small population, especially for women, because we don't do really a lot of custom suits, it's expensive and time consuming, and usually only reserved for like the most special occasions, like weddings. So a ready-to-wear dress like this could serve a much larger population, but I was a custom designer, couture designer. And I didn't want to spend my time sewing dresses like some sweatshop stitcher. So I needed to figure out how to get this dress made in a factory in bulk. So it took me about a year of learning how to manufacture with a factory, because it's completely different from custom design. I had to find the right fabric that I wanted. I had to learn how to draft patterns commercially, because I'd only drafted them for myself before, and my little notes or however I do things, nobody else knows what that is, but now I had to do it an industry standard way. What is industry standard? I had to make tech packs. What the hell is a tech pack? I don't know. And then I had to find a factory that was willing to work with me with the small number of dresses that I wanted to make. And I'll have to be honest, American made really, I started making in the United States really just because I was afraid of the language barrier. It wasn't that I had this high moral, like, make in America. It really just was I didn't want to deal with not understanding the language. But once we did it, then I realized how important it really was to a lot of people when they would ask, where is it made? And then I was thinking like, wow, I'll be embarrassed to say it's not made in America. And so that's why we've always kept it made in America. But even with the lowest minimums that the factory would do, I'm still going to end up with more dresses than I could sell in my little appointment-only studio. So we started to wholesale dresses, and we were doing pretty well. By then, I had hired my first employee, Brittany, and we were wholesaling dresses. We had many boutiques locally and boutiques across the country. And in 2015, we were featured in O Magazine as, and actually that's our fleece peep that is now on free if you spend more than $200. But it was in Oprah's magazine in 2015, and we did amazing sales. By 2016, we had a number even more wholesale, and we had wholesale accounts even in Europe. And that's when a knitting machine broke at the mill. We had been getting our fabric knit, especially for us, in LA, and then shipped over to New York to our factory. It was logistically, it was a pain in the butt, but that was how it had to work. They knit in LA. The factory that'll deal with us with our small quantities was in New York. Well, the knitting machine broke, and they couldn't finish the fabric, and we waited and waited and waited, and after a few months, our factory in New York said we cannot, even when this stuff comes, we cannot get this done in time for you to meet your deadlines with your new Europe accounts. So I refused to accept defeat, and I called the mill, and I told them to send me whatever fabric is done. I know all of it's not done, but whatever is done, send it to me. And then I leased a space in an old rundown warehouse in Homewood, in one little room, and Brittany and I made the entire European orders ourselves, just the two of us. So, so yeah, we were feeling pretty badass. We got that done. I mean, we took that on. But on the flip side, we were never able to finish the United States orders, and we lost all those accounts. So we were devastated and broke. And but yeah, I just, looking back, I was like failing things left and right, but I was determined that I was going to build this bitch, and I was going to get it done. So with no money coming in, I had to figure out how to stay afloat. So I called our factory in New York, which I don't think that anyone ever does, but I called them and I said, do I have any fabric left over from previous seasons? And I did. And I don't know why he still had it, because usually they sell it off and you never hear about it, but I had fabric, and I said, okay, can you send it back to me? And when the fabric arrived, I was shocked. This isn't even all of it, but there was so much fabric, just pallets and pallets of fabric from previous seasons just overflowing. And I was excited because now we had fabric, but I was also sick to my stomach knowing that that's just money sitting there that I would never have known about if we hadn't been in this situation. So with that fabric and a couple of part-time sewers that we got from the local art institute, we were able to produce enough collections over the next 2 seasons to survive. And we learned a little bit about factory production in the process, or at least enough to know that there's a lot of unnecessary waste, and we knew that there had to be a better way to do it. So we decided we needed to start our own factory. Now, North Carolina used to be the hub of textile mills and manufacturing, and then NAFTA went into effect and everything left and went overseas. But we had heard through the grapevine that some local designers there and a few small mills were teaming up and trying to revitalize the American textile industry. So in the fall of 2017, I think it was, Brittany and I traveled to Morgantown, North Carolina to spend a week touring factories and asking questions about how they operate. And by spring 2018, we were ready to give it a try. And it was hard work. We still had a lot to iron out, but we loved the control of it, being able to minimize the fabric waste, being able to make small numbers, knowing that if it sells, we can make more, and if it doesn't, we can stop making it and reallocate the fabric to make something else. The downside was that we were essentially a 2.5-person company. So not big enough to manage both the retail store and the separate factory location. So most days what would happen is I'd put a sign on the store door and say, sorry at the factory. I think I missed, by that time, we actually had turned my design studio into a retail space, because once we were in several local boutiques, we decided to just pull them out of the boutiques. Since we were at the store, we thought we were going to be at the store all day, or at the studio all day. We turned that into a store, and we were selling out of there. But we couldn't manage both locations with our 2.5 people. So then I decided we need to become vertically integrated. So in the winter of 2018, we found the perfect location, and it was a 6,000 square foot storefront facility in Etna. Do I have a slide of that? I don't know what oops, what did I do? Yeah, there we go. So it was enough space for a nice sized boutique in the front and the factory all in the back. It's all open. So if you're there shopping, you can see us manufacturing. We do invite people to come back and see what we're making and how we make it. We often host events and give tours to really educate people on how their clothing is made. We now have room for an assortment of sewing machines, a small team of, I call them apparel manufacturing specialists, a technical designer, and a computerized pattern making equipment. We manage our production and our waste, making patchwork blankets with the scraps that are left. So after we finish cutting the garments, the fabric that's left on the table, if it's this big, we cut it into a square, and then we quilt it together and donate the blankets. If anything that's smaller than that goes into a bin, and that all goes to the Humane Society, and they use those scraps for pet bedding, and they make animal toys and things out of those. So we are we're quickly approaching zero waste. My next goal is to eliminate all the plastic from our production, which we're working on. It's very hard. So where I am now was not the original plan. It kind of blossomed as the result of many failures. Some that allowed me to refine my goal, some that forced me in another direction, and some that led me to unexpected success. Through my own experience, I realized that the key is to figure out what you love to do, find a way to make money doing it, always look for opportunities to learn, and never be afraid to take risks. Then you'll have stories to tell. And I'm happy I got to hear some of those earlier today, and I look forward to hearing more. I don't know. Do you want me to answer any questions if anybody had any? Oh, you had a question?
Maybe Brittany? Where's Brittany?
Brittany's over here. Brittany, you want to come up?
Was Mike supportive from the very beginning?
He was. He doesn't really understand why I work. He's kind of said, like, why don't you do what the other wives are doing? I will say that he did finally, I don't know if maybe last year, I think Meryl Streep was on accepted an award, and she said something about women working, and he was watching that, and that, like, he was like, oh, like he got it. And then it's interesting now to hear him talk to we have a 13-year-old little girl, so to hear him talk to her, like, he gets it now, and he's like, and I like the example you're setting for Harley and for the boys. Then, yeah, I mean, he gets annoyed sometimes when I don't have dinner cooked, but I don't care. Yeah.
Was it hard at first when you were setting your pricing and realizing that maybe your gross margin wasn't quite hitting your goal? Like you said, to make money is your number one priority. So was that a tough decision?
It's still tough. we're always, I mean, pricing is hard, and to get that balance between making a profit, but also not being out of the ballpark for people to look at it and go, like, I'm not paying that. Like, Yeah, it's something that we're always looking at, always, and always adjusting. Brittany can attest to that because she does a lot of that. Oh. Does anybody else have a question? Oh, back here.
So my grandmother taught me to sew, and I often have to tailor my own clothes. Who taught you to sew?
My mom. I mean, she didn't know how to sew. It really was just trial and error. Like, she taught me how to work the machine in the beginning, but it was just a lot of practice. And I find it interesting, like when adults say they want to learn to sew or they start talking about learning to sew as an adult. I always think that would be really, really hard, because by the time you're an adult, you have taste and you know what quality is. And so when you're all excited to make your curtains and they come out like horrible, you know what I mean? Like you won't use them. Whereas I learned to sew as a kid, so you saw the prom dress. Like I was just proud I made it. I didn't care what it looked like, and that kept me going. But I think as an adult, if I made that prom dress, I'd be done. Yeah.
Looking at your business today and where you see yourself in your mind 3 to 5 years from now, what does that picture look like?
Like a bigger capacity for the factory. I'm really want to move more towards on-demand manufacturing. So if you were to, I want this shirt, but these are my measurements, we would do it all right there, computerized, print it out, cut one, make it, and ship it. Right now, we do very small runs. So right now we do like shirt A, there will be 5 white, small, shirt A. 5 white, medium, shirt A. That's all we do in our initial run. And then as they sell, maybe the extra larges don't sell, so we're done with 5. That's it. But the smalls sell out, so we'll make 5 more. I'd like to not be able to have to carry inventory really at all, and to be able to do it one-off and more exact, customized to measurements is what I would like to do. And then add menswear, and then add like comfortable shoes. Stylish, comfortable shoes. Children's clothes?
No, children's toys.
Oh, maybe, yes. Might do a throwback pair. Yeah.
So how do you balance your life between, first of all, being a mother, being a wife, a business owner, and then yourself?
It's a hot mess. Yeah. I don't know. I'm very busy, but I also do relax. Definitely prioritize. My kids come first. Absolutely. And fortunately, I have like awesome help at work. Brittany not only is Brittany amazing at work, but she's also amazing with my kids. And she has had to, run to Cranberry to pick somebody up and, drop kids off at summer camp. And so I definitely think that's part of it. And then kind of deputizing the kids at home. I don't ask them to do a lot, but they did have to do their own laundry at a very young age. I mean, mainly because I didn't get the laundry done and somebody complained that they had nothing clean to wear. And so I said, you know what, that's on you now. And so I did force them to do their own laundry. And now my daughter, I think, was like 5 at the time, 4 or 5. And we have like the stackable. So she would have to like pull the chair in to put her stuff in. But the fun thing, she would do it, but she'd be doing it at like 2 o'clock on a Saturday night, like in the morning. In the middle of the night, she's doing her laundry, but because we have no bedtimes on the weekends. But yeah, I think just prioritizing and getting help where need, and just that my kids and my husband understand that I work today too, so I'm not cooking dinner. There's Uber. So, anybody else?
You said that Brittany was your first employee, and
Yes.
you kept her obviously all these years, and I can see you guys have built a great relationship. How did you keep her getting it right the first time? Because I'm sure we all know employees are the hardest part about business. How did you get that right in the first place and grow with her?
I think I was just lucky with her. I was lucky with her. She's a great kid. She's not a kid anymore, but she was when she came. Yeah, I've got some wrong. since then, that Brittany can attest to, because she's usually the one that's like, you need to fire that person. But I know people say like slow to hire, quick to fire. I think I do that backwards. I will admit that I'm just like excited and happy to have someone interested and ready to help, and I need the help. And then get into it and be like, oh, maybe we can train them to be better, and then no, we can't. So yeah, I don't know. I kind of just go by gut and someone's passion. Like you can tell. I think in what we do, you can tell if someone's passionate about it. And so that's what gets me, is like they're passionate, great, but yeah, they may not always be a good worker. I don't know if that's helpful. Is there else?
Do you still have your clothing line, are they still sold in boutiques or just at your location?
So we do a little bit of wholesaling. When our mill went down and we kind of lost all our wholesale accounts, it gave us an opportunity to kind of rethink the process, because we had been traveling to New York and doing the big trade shows, which are really, really expensive to have a teeny tiny booth. And when we were doing them and talking to the other vendors who had been doing it a lot longer, they started to see like a change. Like people were frustrated, buyers, it was, after the recession, buyers weren't taking risks. They were just buying the same things over and over again. They weren't looking for new brands, weren't looking to, to expand their offerings. And so when our mill went down and we kind of lost all our accounts, it gave us an opportunity to kind of rethink how we wanted to spend our money. And just as that was happening, kind of the internet in apparel was picking up, and I just thought it was a better investment to invest in online marketing than it was to kind of buy the horse and buggy of the trade shows. So we do wholesale, but really it's a boutique has to come to us. So that's the accounts we have now are because someone saw our stuff and they're like, we love this, we want to sell it in our store, can we? And then we'll do it. Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Good.
Any more questions?
So thank you for having me.
And I do have to mention that she mentioned private parties, and I am very thrilled to announce that our Business Women's Roundtable is already in the works of planning a bus trip to her location. So we have mentioned that, and I've talked with a few people, and of course I will be looking for sponsors for the bus and for the catering when we get there, but they said they have some favorite caterers they will work with, but I know some buses that we're more than glad to take a trip to Pittsburgh. For those of you, please be watching your newsletter for those of you that are members. Thank you so much to all of our vendors for donating gift baskets. Thank you to all the vendors that are here.